I shouldn't be telling you this, and maybe you shouldn't be listening, but there are stories that refuse to stay buried. They cling to us like mold that spreads in the dark, always returning when the house is quiet, whispering names you thought you had forgotten. I've tried to erase it. I deleted recordings, tore notebook pages, changed phone numbers, even moved cities. But the silence finds me. It always does. Sometimes it's just a breath, brushing the back of my neck when I'm near a door. Sometimes it's time itself, always the same minute, always the same curse. 2:47 in the morning. That's when the walls remember. That's when the silence begins to breathe. And maybe, tonight, as you hear this, it will breathe closer to you. The story begins in Ouro Preto, an old colonial city in Brazil, built on steep cobblestone streets and surrounded by mountains. A family named Lacerda inherited a house there. An inheritance, in Portuguese they call it herança, a word that sounds more like a burden than a gift. The house stood tall with faded paint, peeling like old skin, its narrow hallway stretching too far, like a throat. On the first day, they counted the bedrooms. The blueprint said 5. They found only 4. The 5th had been swallowed by the wall. They laughed. They made jokes about drunk builders. But inside that house, mathematics obeyed another rule. Camila, the youngest daughter, was the first to notice. Every night, at exactly 3 in the morning, she woke up crying and pointed to the end of the hallway. "The door is open," she said. But there was no door, only a blank wall. One night, she pulled her mother there, placed her little hand on the plaster and whispered, "Here. The room is here." They tapped on the wall. The sound came back hollow, as if it were a drum hiding another chamber inside. Days later, the wall began to crack. Thin lines appeared, vertical and diagonal, until a shape began to emerge, the faint outline of a door. The father tried to resist, but curiosity devours faster than fear. He took a chisel and hammer, struck the plaster, and revealed wood behind it. A gust of cold air poured out, air that had no smell and no sound, as if that space had been holding its breath for decades. Inside was a bedroom, intact, untouched by time. A bed covered with a crochet blanket, a handmade textile common in Brazilian homes, still depressed in the middle as if someone had just risen. A wooden dresser, a crooked crucifix nailed to a yellowing wall, and on the table, a clock, its hands frozen forever. The moment they touched it, the world outside went silent. Not dimmed, not muffled, gone. And in that silence, they realized the silence itself was alive. Every clock in the house stopped. The microwave's digits froze. The father's wristwatch froze. All at the same minute, 2:47. The mother said it was wiring. The father smiled and promised to fix it. But Camilla pressed her forehead against the new door and pulled away, as if it had exhaled warm air against her skin. The house shifted. The mother began hearing voices, faint and broken, as if letters had been swallowed. The father opened his notebook and found sentences he didn't remember writing. "They don't want to leave. The room does not exist." Camilla drew the family at school, but added one more figure every time. A faceless boy with long arms always holding her hand. Then came the screams. Neighbors called the police. Inside, officers found furniture overturned, walls covered in the same phrase written endlessly, "It wasn't meant to be opened." The father sat in shock, repeating, "She isn't my daughter." The mother was gone. Never found. Camilla was taken by relatives. She never spoke of the house again. But the officer saw something worse inside the hidden room. The walls were covered in scratches, human nails, desperate, clawing outward. Someone had tried to escape. And when engineers studied the blueprints again, they saw what no one wanted to see. 6 rooms, not 5. A 6th room that could never be located in the house. a missing space, waiting. And yet, the Lacerdas weren't the first. Decades earlier, in the 1970s, another couple had rented the same house. The wife told neighbors her husband was sleepwalking into walls. Every night, he walked the hallway and stood before the same blank plaster, knocking and whispering apologies. In the morning, his hands were white with dust, as if he had clawed all night. They left in terror. He was later found wandering barefoot at dawn, muttering in Portuguese, "O quarto não existe." The room does not exist. The police files from the Lacerda case held other secrets. One page, handwritten, told of the officer who first entered the hidden room. He wrote about the crucifix, the scratches, the silence. And then one chilling detail: the dust tastes sweet. Dust should not taste sweet, but he swore it melted on his tongue like sugar. His report was dismissed. He resigned weeks later, moving far from Ouro Preto. In drunken confession, he admitted that sometimes, even years later, he woke in the night with the taste of sugar pressed against his lips. In 2015, an architect named Paulo was sent to map the house. He measured with lasers, rulers, all his instruments. But the more he measured, the more impossible it became. Walls thicker than any design allowed. Corridors that stretched differently depending on the hour. Geometry that twisted like paper folding in on itself. Paulo sketched, desperate. His drawings leaked online, staircases bending into Mobius strips, hallways turning back on themselves, and always a black square in the center, the missing room. A year later, Paulo disappeared. His family claimed he took a bus to Belo Horizonte, the capital of Minas Gerais, but no record was ever found. The last note in his sketchbook read, "Some doors exist only in memory, and memory is stronger than brick." And what of Camilla, the little girl? She never gave interviews. But in 2019, fragments of her childhood diary surfaced anonymously online. The entries were childish, uneven. "He plays with me when they are sleeping. He is nice, but he has no eyes. He says the room is his bed." Another page, darker. "Mom is sad because he says she belongs to him too. Dad can't hear him. I can. I don't want to anymore." The last line in the diary was almost illegible. "He says I must draw the new door tonight." After that, the pages end. Some say Camilla still draws to this day, notebooks filled with faceless companions no one else is allowed to see. People tried to find the sixth room, psychics, priests, engineers. Some claim that at 2:47 the air thickens, the corridor stretches, and for one unbearable minute the house rearranges itself. Others swear they've seen a faint glow outlining a door where none should be, as if a photograph was developing against the wall. But no one has ever crossed it. In Ouro Preto, people whisper, "O sexto quarto é para os esquecidos." The sixth room is for the forgotten. They say entering it doesn't kill you, it erases you. You are remembered only by the house, never again by the world outside. And I went there myself. I borrowed the keys, though they said no one should. I stepped through the door. The air was thick and bitter. My pen scratched numbers into a notebook, and the ink vanished before my eyes. The corridor curved just slightly, like a spine bending. I pressed my ear against the plaster. No sound, but it wasn't silence. It was presence. And then a pressure, soft, invisible, against my skull, as though the walls were closing. At 2:47, the clock in my pocket stopped. The glass of water on the dresser quivered, though the air was still, and I heard them, fingernails scratching. Not from the door, I knew, but from the wall beside me, from a place that should not exist. The wall exhaled, warm human air, and in that moment a voice pressed itself directly into my ear, bypassing sound. speaking in absence itself. It wasn't meant to be opened. I staggered outside. The city's noises returned, too loud, like life had been unmuted. My hands were covered in white dust, sweet dust. My recorder played back nothing but silence until the third try, when faint words emerged, layered voices gasping in unison. Behind the wall, I left, but the house followed me. In every room I've lived since, there is a darker corner. The hum of the refrigerator sometimes dips at 2:47, and sometimes at night I wake to find a new line in my own notebook, written in my hand. The room does not exist, and now you know. You've heard about the tenants who vanished, the officer who tasted sugar in dust, the architect who disappeared into his sketches, the child who drew faceless friends, the blueprints that showed more than brick, the scratches that begged to escape. You know the secrets that should have stayed sealed, and maybe now the house knows you too. So, tell me, do you really believe this is only a story? Would you dare to knock on your own walls tonight to listen for a hollow echo? Or worse, have you already heard something scratching in the dark? Before you leave this video, look carefully at the quietest corner of your room. Notice if the silence there feels heavier than the rest. Notice if your clock hesitates when you aren't watching. And ask yourself, one last time, are you absolutely certain that you are alone right now?